They still call me Mama, but not like they used to. Not with warmth, not with care. Now it's clipped, clean, polite, and cold, like a title on a folder they keep but never open. I arrived early that Friday, just like always, holding a heavy pot of gumbo I'd been stirring since noon. My arms ached from the weight, but my pride held firm. That pot was my peace offering, my seat at the table. But when I walked in, no one looked up. Not Trayvon, not Shanikea, not even little Muriel. The house was full of laughter, music, and glasses clinking. Still not one voice called out to greet me. I set the pot down on the counter and waited. I thought maybe someone would come over, take the lid off, say, "Mama, this smells just like childhood." But nothing. No smile, no hug, just Trayvon pointing with his chin and saying, "Put it over there, Mama." I used to be the heart of every meal. Now I wasn't even a guest. "Have a seat, Mama," I said quietly to myself, but none was offered. Instead, I stood by the edge of the dining room, watching my son charm the room like he was born for it. His wife, Shanikia, floated past me twice, wineglass in hand, never making eye contact. The couch was full, the table was fuller, and I was air. Then Trayvon said it. "Mama don't do much now. Honestly, she useless around here." He chuckled, just a soft laugh, like he hadn't meant it. But he didn't take it back. And the people around him, his friends, his co-workers, even his pastor, laughed with him, like it was all right to joke about the woman who used to carry him on her hip when his legs were too weak to walk. I didn't flinch. I just folded the napkin in front of me slowly, like I was smoothing out more than just cloth. Once when he was 5, he grabbed my knees in church and cried because he thought I was leaving him. That memory sat heavier than the gumbo pot, but I swallowed it. You see, a knife you see coming hurts less than one hidden in a son's tongue. Later, as the food was being plated, I reached for my change of clothes. I always brought a church dress for family dinners. It made me feel prepared, respectful. But Shanikea caught my hand. "No need for that, Mama," she said, her voice syrupy sweet with a bitter aftertaste. "Just stay in what you got. We need someone to pass plates." She handed me a stack like I worked there. That's when I knew I wasn't family in this house. I was staff. Muriel, my grandbaby, saw me from across the room. Her little legs wobbled toward me, arms wide, but Shanikea swooped in quick and picked her up. "Let the adults talk," she said, planting Muriel back on the couch with a tablet. I wanted to fight it. I wanted to speak, but I heard my own mother's voice in my head. "Don't let them shame you into disappearing." So I didn't. I adjusted my wooden hairpin, Eloise, the one I wore when I gave birth to Trayvon, and I smiled, not out of joy, but survival. Then came the moment that broke something I didn't know was still whole. I was walking past the kitchen, balancing 3 plates, when I heard Trayvon again. His voice carried. "We only let her stay close 'cause she old. Can't do nothing else." He said it like it was fact, like it was fine. I didn't drop the tray, I didn't make a sound, I just stopped in the middle of the kitchen, holding food I had cooked with hands that raised him, my fingers clenched around the serving spoon, knuckles gone pale. My spine stiffened, but not with pride, just control. That was when I knew I wasn't Mama anymore. I was furniture, I was background, I was tolerated. But you can't tolerate what's gone. No one noticed when I stepped outside. Not a soul missed me. I stood on the porch under a dim yellow light, the smell of fried catfish still clinging to my dress. I looked out at the street, quiet, familiar, unchanged, unlike everything else. I whispered to myself, maybe silence is what taught them I could be unseen. I checked the time on my phone. That was the last dinner I attended as their quiet mother. They didn't know it yet, but something in me shifted that night. Saturday started with the kind of breeze that carries good memories. I dressed Muriel in her favorite sunflower overalls and tied her braids with yellow beads that clicked like a prayer when she walked. The neighborhood was holding a back-to-school picnic at the park, not far from the house, and I figured a little laughter would do us both good. I packed juice, sandwiches, and a folding chair that squeaked every time I opened it. The park was alive, BBQ smoke curling through the air, kids chasing each other with sticky hands, soul music playing low from someone's car radio. Church folks talked about scripture and gas prices like they weighed the same. I kept to myself mostly. Found a bench near the water's edge under an old oak tree and watched Muriel run in circles. She'd wave at me every now and then, flashing that gap-toothed smile. Trayvon and Shanikia showed up nearly an hour late. They didn't wave, they didn't smile, but they put on the act real smooth, hugging folks, passing out bottles of water like they cared. Shanikia's nails were long and perfect. Trayvon wore a fresh polo like he stepped out a magazine, but when they walked past me, all I got was a nod. I stayed on that bench watching Muriel. She was my joy, and sometimes you hold your breath around people who once called you home. She came over, tugged my sleeve. Nana, can I play by the water? My eyes shifted to the lake. It was small, barely up to my waist, but deep enough to be dangerous for a child. I hesitated, then I said, "Just 5 minutes, baby. Stay where Nana can see you." Not 2 minutes later, Shanikia pulled me aside, voice all honeyed sarcasm. "Mama, let her be. She needs to toughen up anyway. You always babying her." Before I could answer, Trayvon leaned in to whisper something I wasn't meant to hear. Let's see how fast she reacts if something goes wrong. At first it didn't land. I thought maybe I heard wrong. Maybe it was just nonsense, nothing serious. Then I heard it, a splash. Not playful, not planned. A sharp, sudden plunge that cut through the music and laughter like glass shattering. People turned, my eyes locked on the lake, and my heart stopped. Muriel was under, bubbles, then nothing. I screamed, I didn't even think. I ran and threw myself into that water, dress and all. Cold bit into my bones, but I kept going, arms sweeping, eyes wide. She was there, floating, eyes shut, tiny lips blue. I grabbed her, pulled her close, and kicked hard toward shore. My arms felt like cinder blocks, but I didn't stop. Not for air, not for help. When I reached land, I lay her down, patted her back, begged her to breathe. She coughed, then again, then cried. I held her close and didn't care that I was soaked to the soul. Trayvon walked up slow, not even running. "She slipped," he said, brushing lint from his shirt. "You always blaming folks, Mama." I looked at Shaniqua. Her shoes were dry, her hands clean, not a speck of concern in her eyes. Something broke inside me, but not the way they expected. Not in fear, in fury. I wrapped Muriel in the only thing I could find, a picnic blanket someone dropped, and I walked away, past the grills, past the stairs, past my son. That night I laid her beside me in my bed. She snored softly, curled up like she used to in her crib. I didn't cry, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind scratch the windows like it wanted in. Then I picked up the phone. "Vel," I said, "if someone tried to hurt a child, but pretended it was an accident, what could a grandmother do?" Miss Velma didn't blink. "You don't accuse," she said. You gather like you got caught in the morning." I started writing it all down, every word, every moment I'd ignored. The time Shanikia told Muriel she was too soft. The time Trayvon snapped at me for walking her to school. All of it. Black mothers been protecting children since the first ship touched soil. But we protect with brains, not just fists. That night I didn't pray for peace, I prayed for clarity. And that's when I remembered the burner phone I kept, and the recordings I never meant to use. By the time I got home, the sky was already darkening, and the air had that stillness that comes after something too close for comfort. I carried Muriel in my arms, wet hair pressed to my shoulder, her breath soft, steady. I didn't even change out of the clothes I jumped in the lake wearing. I just wrapped her up, laid her gently in her room, and kissed her forehead like I used to when Trayvon was that age. When I walked into the kitchen, Sheni Kia was already moving around like nothing happened. Stirring something on the stove, she glanced over her shoulder and said, "Did y'all have fun?" Her voice was sugar, but I knew that sweetness well. It came with a razor underneath. I didn't answer. I just nodded once, passed her like a breeze she didn't feel, and went into the living room. I sat down slow. My knees cracked a little from the cold lake water still clinging to my skin.
Then I reached under the sofa, same spot it had always been, and pulled out the old box. It had yellowed papers, a few curled up photographs, and one envelope that still smelled like cedar from when I used to keep it in the closet with my mother's shawl. I hadn't touched that box in years. It was supposed to stay closed. But something about today, something about the way Trayvon looked down at me, like I was the help, like he was doing me a favor letting me live, unlocked something I thought I'd buried. I sifted through the stack. Phone bills with odd numbers. Copies of payments I made on this house before it was ever ours. I saw my handwriting on the old deeds, then a newer one with a strange seal. That's when I spotted it, tucked behind a utility notice. A grant application. House improvement funds. In Shani Kaya's name, approved just days ago. I stared at the date. It was the same Friday I brought that gumbo over and got called useless. My chest tightened. I whispered to no one. They're sliding my name off the paper when I'm looking the other way. My fingers trembled. I turned on a small flashlight, kept low so it wouldn't wake Muriel. I looked closer. The grant wasn't for repairs. It was to update ownership records. I held my wooden hairpin Eloise in my palm. She'd been with me through years of shifts, funerals, even the day I stood up in court to defend my sister's son when nobody else would. That pin reminded me I still had backbone, just buried too long under somebody else's ceiling. I picked up the phone and called Norvis Janelle. She used to work county records before her arthritis got bad. We'd sung in choir together when our voices still had more lift than gravel. "Norvis," I said, "how quick can somebody shift a deed without your say-so?" She paused. "Depends. Could be fraud. You see something?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I need to verify a grant. I'll head to the clerk's office tomorrow, early." She exhaled long. "Don't call nobody else, just..."
Gather what you got. You don't go accusing till your hand is full. I know, I said. I haven't lost everything yet. I hung up and leaned back, thinking of all the years I'd let little things slide. Side eyes, missing mail, the way my name stopped showing up on certain holiday cards. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, like rust on a hinge. I was still sitting there when Trayvon came in. The lights were low and the only sound was the ceiling fan groaning above us. He stopped when he saw me at the table, papers spread out like a jigsaw puzzle halfway done. "You're up late, Mama," he said. "Need some water?" I didn't flinch. I looked up, steady. "No, I'm not thirsty. I'm just reading what I should have seen long ago." His lips tightened, but he didn't say anything, just backed up slowly like he stepped on something sharp. I let the silence sit. That night I sat in my old recliner, pages crinkling in my lap. I wasn't sure if what I had was enough, but it was more than what I had yesterday. "They'll clone your silence to bury you," I heard my Aunt Ratha say once, "and if you don't speak, they'll write your ending for you. Tomorrow morning I file at the county office, and I'll be ready when they think I'm still asleep." The house was quiet, too quiet for how loud my thoughts were running. I sat in the living room, lamp dimmed, just me and the sound of the ceiling fan clicking above my head. The streetlights outside cut soft stripes across the walls. All the papers were still spread across my coffee table. Old deeds, new grant forms, bills that didn't line up, and the truth I had chosen not to look at until now. Muriel was asleep in the other room, one arm tossed over the blanket like she owned peace. That child had no idea the war being waged on her behalf. I stared at the wooden hairpin, Eloise, resting right there by my teacup. That pin had seen more than any soul should: jobs lost, funerals, fights behind closed doors. Tonight, she watched me face the storm I should have dealt with years back. I whispered low, like I was talking to my mama's ghost. I can't let them quiet me now. My hands moved like they knew what came next. I picked up my phone and scrolled through contacts until I saw his name, Rudel Markston. Used to be a church boy, now a quiet but sharp lawyer with more sense than flash. I hit dial. It rang twice. "Odella, you all right?" he answered, voice rough from sleep. "I need to talk," I said, "and I need you to listen all the way through." I laid it out, what happened at the lake, the grant documents, the way they were shifting my name off paper like I was dead already. I told him about the strange laughter between Trayvon and Shenikia, the way she never moved toward the water, and how that night he stood in the dark while I read everything they thought I'd never question. He was quiet a long while after I finished. Then he said, "This isn't just personal, Odella. They're setting you up to lose everything. You know that, right?" "I know," I said, "and I know I'm not going to flinch. I'll draw up a cease and desist first thing. Also, I'll check on any deeds or transactions that have your name missing." "Don't call them," I warned. "They think I'm still soft. Let that work in our favor." "All right, I'll protect what you've got. And Odella, don't second guess yourself now. Not now." I hung up, placed the phone face down on the table, and exhaled deep from my belly. Just then I heard it. Footsteps. Trayvon. He moved soft like he didn't want to wake the whole house. He stood in the doorway to the living room, silhouette cut by the hallway light. "You up, Mama?" I didn't answer right away. I let the sound of his shoes clicking on wood fill the space between us. He walked in like he owned the place. "We need to talk about those papers," he started. I stood up slow. "We'll talk," I said, "but in daylight. I'm not your silent shadow tonight." He stared at me. I stared right back. He blinked first. He turned and I heard him whisper something to Shanikea behind the bedroom door. I didn't strain to listen. Let him speak in hushed tones. I was done playing deaf. When the house went still again, I sat back down and checked every single document, one by one, took photos of each on my phone, made a list on the back of a grocery receipt. Miss Veltrees from church, county clerk, old bank manager down at the branch who still remembered my face. Names I could trust, names that'd still look me in the eye. Then I bowed my head and whispered the prayer Mama used to say when things looked too big. "Let me be strong when all eyes turn away." I locked the door, went to lay next to Muriel, her little breath steady and warm beside me. I thought sleep would take me. But then my phone buzzed. One message, no name, just words. "You forgot one file. Check your garage safe." I woke before the sun rose, eyes opening to a quiet house that felt heavier than any night before. The air was still, like it knew something was about to change. I dressed slowly, choosing my dark blue church coat, not because it was Sunday, but because I needed to feel the weight of who I used to be before they tried to write me out. I brushed my hair back and slid in my wooden pin, Eloise, pressing it firm like a crown. I looked at myself in the mirror and said under my breath, "Carry your name with pride." In the next room, I saw Muriel, curled up and safe. Her breathing reminded me of promises I had made to no one but God, to protect what I brought into this world. I gathered my papers into a small black case, the deeds, the grant notice, and copies of the bills that didn't add up. I didn't bother making breakfast. I didn't bother with coffee. I locked the door, stepped outside, and let the cold morning air wash over me. Even the neighborhood felt like it was watching, waiting to see if I'd keep walking. The county records office smelled like dust and lemon oil, full of people shuffling papers like lives weren't written on them. I stood at the counter and asked for public records. My home, my land. The clerk, a young woman with tight braids and tired eyes, slid a stack of documents under the glass. "These are the most recent files," she said. I sat at a side table and opened them. There it was, my address, my house, but my name, Gone, replaced, shifted. Property holder, Shanikia M. Rhodes. I blinked once, twice. The letters didn't change. My finger traced the spot where my name was supposed to be, where it had been for over 20 years. I reached into my case, pulled out the original deed, my signature, my mother's witness stamp. The ink faded, but still alive. They had taken my presence and left only an empty space. A clerk approached, sensing something. "Ma'am, sometimes updates don't erase blood," I said, calm but sharp. She backed away. I walked outside, sat on the bench near the entrance, and dialed Rudel. When he answered, I didn't greet him. I only said, "They changed my name, they erased me." He went silent before saying, "Hold everything, don't confront. We go legal now." But something in me insisted I had to see it through my own eyes first. When I got home, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I went straight to the garage, to the old metal safe under the work table, the one they didn't know I still had the key to. I unlocked it and pulled out the small security cam I'd hidden weeks earlier, mounted high above the porch. I connected it to the spare monitor. There they were, Trayvon 2 weeks earlier, walking out of the county office, envelope in hand. Then, days later, Shanikia, holding documents, reading them, glancing upward. Not surprised, aware, proud, I paused the frame, her face, not guilt, satisfaction. "I never believed in ghosts," I whispered, until mine started speaking. I didn't sit long. I gathered everything, footage, deeds, my birth certificate, and laid them on the dining table. When I heard the door open, I didn't move. Trayvon stepped in. "Mama, we need to talk." I turned the monitor toward him. The footage played, his voice stopped cold. "This is my name," I said, quiet but final. "Not yours to sign away." He opened his mouth, closed it, and in that silence I realized he finally saw me, not as a wall to lean on, but as someone who could move. I turned off the screen. "I want you both to leave my house." He froze. I didn't waver. I walked to the door, case in hand. He followed with his eyes, not steps. On the threshold, I looked back once. "I'll see you in court tomorrow. Don't test me." As I stepped outside, I heard a small voice behind me, soft as breath. "Grandma," Muriel whispered, standing at the hallway corner, "make them see you." I nodded once. This time I would. I woke up while the world was still sleeping. No alarm, no birds, just the hum of my own breath and the quiet strength in my chest. There wasn't fear anymore, not the kind that makes your hands shake or your mouth go dry. No, what I felt was something else. Duty. Like all those years folding in on this moment, I didn't hesitate. I got dressed in a plain grey suit I used to wear to church committee meetings. Nothing flashy, but clean, pressed, and carried the kind of weight only earned with time. I brushed my hair back, fastened my pin, and grabbed the small memory card I'd removed from the garage camera. It felt heavier than it was, like holding a bullet, truth made visible. I brewed coffee, just 1 cup. Didn't touch it. Instead, I sat at the table with my phone in one hand, the card in the other, and made the decision. I uploaded the clip, Muriel singing in the background, while Shanakea read through the forged deed. I sent it to a small local news blog, run by a young woman I once mentored, back when I worked community outreach. 2 hours later, it was live. The headline hit faster than I thought it would. "Grandmother battles, daughter over house, deed forgery." There was a still image of Shanakea smiling at the clerk's office. The video ran right after, grainy, quiet, but clear. Muriel's voice in the background made the whole thing more human, more real. I sat on the couch with Muriel beside me. She didn't say much, just looked up now and then, eyes wide. "Grandma," she said once, "they're talking about you." "I know, baby, let 'em talk." It didn't take long before Shanikia fired back. She posted her own video from the car, hair done, face serious but rehearsed. "I didn't take anything from my mother," she said. "This is all some twisted story from a bitter old woman trying to make drama for attention." She even added tears. Just a few, but enough to stir the pot. Her followers chimed in instantly. Families fight, but this is low. Respect your elders, but this ain't it. And worse, I didn't respond. I watched every lie added to my pile of proof. You thought you could drown me in lies? I whispered, scrolling. Watch me swim. I opened my email and sent the full original deed to the same news outlet. I attached time-stamped images, legal records, and the notarized form with my name, Odella M. Kane, bold and stamped from 22 years ago. I wrote a short note. I never asked for permission to be erased. Then I called Miss Veltris, who used to head the Senior Tenant Coalition, and Norvis, my ex-colleague from the literacy program. I told them what happened. Both of them were quiet for a moment, then said almost at the same time, "Say less, I got you." I sent Rudel a text. If they sue me for defamation, let them. I'll countersue for everything. I walked back into the living room. Muriel had moved from the couch to the floor, playing with her little bracelet, but she looked up the moment I entered. I gave her a smile, not fake, but the kind that says, "You're safe." She smiled back, small and soft. No words. We didn't need them. Then the doorbell rang. Not once, but 2 quick buzzes. Not neighbor casual. Not family friendly. I told Muriel to stay right where she was. She nodded and curled her legs under her. I walked to the front slowly, heels of my shoes tapping across the tile like punctuation, and when I opened the door, they didn't expect the face they saw. The air outside felt heavier than usual. I stepped off my porch just before noon and slid behind the wheel, keys trembling only a little between my fingers. Muriel had stayed behind, drawing on the living room floor like nothing in this world could touch her, but out here, it could touch me. I drove slow through the neighborhoods, taking my usual back roads toward the community center, but everything looked different. Church signs had quotes twisted to feel personal. Honor thy father and thy mother, but don't shame them. Billboards flashed digital images of smiling families, and I knew what they were trying to say without saying it. My face was in the news now. Everyone knew. Folks on porches paused mid-conversation as I passed. Some turned away, others stared, no nods, no waves, no, "How you doing, Miss Kane?" Just silence, sharp as judgment. I stopped at a red light near the gas station where I used to hand out turkeys every Thanksgiving. The clerk inside didn't look up. They made me a spectacle before I even opened my mouth, I muttered. I parked across from the center. I wasn't late, but the lot was packed already. Word spread fast when there's mess to watch. As I walked toward the steps, Muriel came up beside me, holding tight to my hand. I didn't even hear her run from the house, but there she was. Out front, people murmured, a mix of older folks and teens filming with their phones. Then Muriel stepped forward, standing in front of everyone like her little body carried something too big for words. She looked at the crowd, then said, clear as daylight, "Ban Gwai is the one who saved me, not them." You could hear the silence settle like snow. Phones lifted, cameras clicked. Trayvon looked down at his shoes. "Shani Kea?" Her face froze. That kind of freeze when you don't know if you're going to cry, run, or lie harder. I didn't say much. I pulled Muriel close and whispered, "You're my proof, baby." Inside the community hall, the walls echoed with the weight of too many eyes. I sat toward the back, just watching. Miss Veltri stood first. "Let me tell y'all something. That woman right there, she taught me how to fill out my first rental form after my divorce. She watched my son when I couldn't keep up 2 jobs. Norvis followed, pointing right at me. She the reason my brother can read well enough to keep his job at the post office." Others chimed in. Some neighbors admitted they'd always wondered why the house deed changed hands so fast, why Trayvon suddenly had money to fix up his ride, why Shanikea was flashing new jewelry in photos. Outside, hashtags started trending. Giannin's Meme Odella. You can't erase me. My phone buzzed nonstop. Then Trayvon tried. He walked up, cleared his throat like he was about to give a sermon. "Look, I know things got messy, but it was never about disrespect. My mama, she's just been confused lately. She's had some hard years. People booed. One man shouted, "You erased her name!" Trayvon froze. Words died on his tongue. Shanakea tried posting another statement, a new PR team video, but it didn't land. Folks saw the cracks now, saw the masks slipping. I stayed seated, didn't speak. I let them drown in their own noise. Later that evening, after folks trickled out and the lights dimmed, I held Muriel's hand on the walk home. Neither of us said much. When we stepped inside the quiet of the house, I flicked the hallway light on and stood still. Tonight wasn't my victory. Tomorrow I'd take the stand. Because I'm not fighting for what's mine. I'm fighting so my name can't be forgotten again. The courthouse looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just outgrown the fear it used to hold. I stood there on the sidewalk, the same shoes I wore to my late husband's funeral, pressing into the concrete, sturdy, plain, and not meant to be fashionable. Muriel gripped my hand tight like a child again, though she said nothing. Her eyes were wide, searching. Cameras flashed. Voices called my name. Reporters leaned across barricades, hungry for something sensational. I gave them nothing, only a glance, a nod. I didn't come here to perform. I came here to claim what was mine. Shanakea and Trayvon were already inside. I caught a glimpse of her profile through the glass doors, lipstick fresh, arms crossed like armor. Trayvon avoided looking our way. As I climbed the steps, I noticed old neighbors, church folks, folks who used to bring greens to my porch. They stood still. Some smiled gently, others just nodded. Nobody turned away. Inside the courtroom, everything was stiff and quiet, like waiting for a storm to break. Rudell adjusted his tie and opened the folder we'd been protecting like gospel. He stood slowly and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, this is the original property deed, dated, notarized, and filed under the legal name Odella Faye Jacobs." He passed copies to the bench. Then another set, same format, but different name. "This is the version recently submitted by Ms. Shanakea Bird. No accompanying signature from Mrs. Jacobs, no formal notification, and no transfer authorization." The clerk who processed the paperwork looked uncomfortable. She tugged at her collar, cleared her throat. "There was a system update," she offered, "and I admit the submission bypassed usual verification." Her voice trailed off. I stood up without waiting for Rudol's cue. "My name was taken without my consent, and that," I pointed at the falsified document, "is not a mistake. That's a theft. My name is my identity, and nobody, not even my own blood, has the right to bury it alive." Gasps echoed behind me. Cameras flashed again. The judge nodded, measured. "Continue." Next came Tavarius. I hadn't seen him in years. He was thicker now, salt and pepper hair cropped short. Still had that banker's confidence, but his voice was steadier than I expected. "I was the lending officer on the original asset," he said, "and let me be very clear. The mortgage, equity line, and all renewals were under Mrs. Odella Faye Jacobs. She was always the principal. The daughter only ever acted as courier." Shanika's jaw dropped. Trayvon stared straight ahead, blinking hard. Tavarius looked at me as he said it. "She is the rightful owner of every square foot." I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't even nod. I just stood there and let the truth settle in the room like thick smoke. They could taste it now, the weight of all their lies turning sour. When the filings came in, the ones Rudell had warned me might be buried, we saw it clear. Shanakea had applied for fraudulent business licenses, used the family trust to fund side ventures, even bought furniture in my name. The courtroom tilted, people shifted, some whispered, others just watched her unravel. After a recess, I was in the hallway sipping water from a styrofoam cup when I felt her presence. I turned. There she was, heels clacking hard, eyes burning. "You humiliated me," she spat. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. I only defended what was always mine. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore, like I'd become someone new overnight. But no, this version of me had always been there. She just never expected I'd show her my full self. A guard stepped between us. She didn't fight it. I walked past her, not looking back. Outside, the sun had shifted. Afternoon heat pressed down, but the wind gave me breath. Cameras gathered again. Reporters yelled names again. But this time, they weren't here for a spectacle. They were here for a reckoning. I held Muriel's hand again as we stepped down the courthouse steps. The crowd parted, some reaching to touch my shoulder, others just bowing their heads. And then I said it. Not for them, not for the press, but for the record. They froze their accounts, but they forgot you can't freeze the truth. And as we descended, I felt every soul watching, waiting for my next move. Sunlight was softer that morning, touching the curtains like it was careful not to wake me. No alarms, no court dates. Just me and Muriel, breathing in the stillness I'd fought to reclaim. She was curled beside me, her small hand resting on my arm like she was afraid I'd leave. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't rise to someone else's schedule. I rose for myself. The floor creaked the same way it always had, but the house felt different. Occupied, acknowledged, mine again. I buttoned my blouse slowly, caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, and paused at the wooden hairpin on the dresser. Eloise, I whispered, tracing its smooth edge. My mother's voice moved through memory. Carry your name with pride, even when your name feels heavy. When I stepped onto the porch, I saw faces I hadn't seen in months. Neighbors who used to wave and pass by now lingered. Mrs. Keller from across the street had a pound cake in her arms. Deacon Willis held his Bible at his chest. Nobody asked how I felt. Nobody told me to be strong. They stood in quiet acknowledgement, as if they finally understood they'd watched me drown and said nothing. I nodded. That was enough. By mid-morning, the church van arrived. Pastor Gerald led them, his robe traded for a simple suit. The choir women set down dishes on my kitchen table. Collards, macaroni, cornbread wrapped in foil. They didn't offer pity. They offered presence. She's never needed applause, Miss Veltrice said as she stood near my living room doorway. She just needed her name. I didn't speak. Let them say it. Let them correct the story they once let drift. Reporters gathered at the end of the block but didn't cross the property line. The community formed a barrier, silent but firm. A prayer circle began on my lawn, hymns rising low under the oak branches. I stood behind the screen door, listening. I didn't join, I didn't need to. The prayer was already over me. Later, I found Muriel in the backyard, sitting where my azaleas used to bloom. The earth was dry. She traced circles in the dirt with a stick. When she heard me, she didn't smile. "Grandma," she asked, not looking up, "will they do it again? Will someone take your name again?" I knelt beside her. "Not if I teach you how to hold your own." She turned to face me and I brushed her hair back, steady as a promise. "We don't wait for apologies anymore, baby. We build futures they can't sign away." She leaned into me and for the first time she wasn't trembling. We walked back into the house and I headed for the kitchen. I lit the stove and pulled out the gumbo ingredients I hadn't touched in months. Okra, shrimp, sausage, onion. As the roux darkened, I placed Eloise on the counter, where the light caught it just right. That pin had held back my hair through funerals and feast days. Today it held something else, continuity. "Wash these," I told Muriel, handing her the vegetables. She obeyed without question. We moved like ritual, no wasted motion. The smell of gumbo spread through my home, filling rooms that had been emptied by betrayal. "When a woman feeds her home," I murmured, stirring slow, "she's not quiet. She speaks through every seasoning." In the late afternoon, I stepped outside with a cup of tea. The street was empty now, no cameras, no crowds, just the wind threading through the oaks and the distant hum of someone mowing their lawn. I thought about everything they'd taken, everything they'd tried to bury. and I thought about what remained. My name, my ground, my granddaughter's steady gaze. They froze their money, but they couldn't freeze my soul. I didn't need apologies. I needed acknowledgement, my own. I looked toward the road, toward whatever might come next. I won't leave it empty again, I whispered.